Well, still to come in People Today this morning, we discuss the impact. Well, as for cats, they don't get away either because even they don't always keep their cool. And here to try and stop the fur flying is our pet therapist, Peter Neville. Hi, Peter.
Morning.
Hi, Cass. Now, we've had the pit bull terrier story in the news, the baker in Lincoln who was attacked by two pit bull terriers. Why do dogs become aggressive in the first place?
Well, there are many reasons why dogs can become aggressive, and some of them are to be expected. A mother dog defending her puppies, for instance, would be an acceptable, understandable form of aggression.
In that case, it was a mum and her pup, wasn't it?
Yes, I mean, you know, young puppies in a bed. But I mean, what we have to do here is distinguish between the normal family types of pet dog, be they a breed like Cassie or a mongrel, from breeds which have been deliberately bred to fight. And this is what the American Pit Bull Terrier is. It's been selected, it's been deliberately channeled down a program of breeding to be aggressive. And you can't take a dog that's had that sort of intensity of breeding and say, right, now we're just going to keep you as a pet, and not expect it to have a sudden flash. And the problem is that when they are aggressive, they're so much more serious about it. One of the great problems with Pit Bull Terriers, and with some of the other fighting breeds, like Rottweilers, is that they don't always recognise submission in their victim. So whereas a Border Collie, if it's getting angry and its victim backs away or shows a sign of submission, that will inhibit the aggression. With a Pit Bull Terrier, that won't inhibit the aggression, so it carries on and you're into fatal or near-fatal consequences.
Because on the same day that the Pit Bull Terrier attacked the baker, there was also a 3-year-old girl that was attacked by a collie. But is it just breeds of dog like Pit Bulls or Rottweilers? Because, for instance, 15 years ago it was the Alsatian that we were all hearing about, wasn't it?
That's right, and I think what's happened is that you know, we keep more and more dogs, but people are getting better and better about understanding them and about how to accommodate the different characters of different breeds. And we've selected now German Shepherd dogs to be much more companion dogs than to be working dogs. In the old days, they were the traditional guarding dog. Therefore, when they were moved into the home environment, there was more chance that they would flash. Now they've been watered down a bit. They're highly trainable, they're highly intelligent. People take them on knowing what to expect. With the Pit Bull Terrier, I'm afraid they're not taking them on as just as pets, as companions. People are taking them on as weapons, as status symbols. I think they're inadequate people in some way. Who need these things. No one needs a Pit Bull Terrier. No one needs a dog as a weapon.
Do you find that usually dogs that are aggressive will have aggressive owners?
Unfortunately, with some of these, unfortunately, they're not the dogs that I end up treating because they want their dog to be aggressive. I treat the people whose dog has turned aggressive for some reason and it worries them and they want to do something about it.
We're talking about dogs, but are cats, or can cats be as aggressive as dogs?
Much more unusually, because we don't see the social competitiveness that we see in a dog group. For instance, most of the dog bites that are recorded are directed towards the family. And it's a social problem. The dog is perhaps trying to be dominant within the group. And now cats don't have a social pack. They don't view us as a pack. Therefore, we don't see that sort of competitive aggression within the family. But we do see very, very strange, very rare cases, I should say, of cats which are aggressive towards their owners. Sometimes triggered towards very strange responses to their diet, sometimes just a general psychotic behaviour in a cat. And of course we see plenty of aggression from one cat to another. Because they're independent, they don't live in a group, and is very good at tolerating new cats coming into the territory or new cats being taken on by the owner.
Well, we certainly don't have an aggressive dog in front of us. Just have a look at Cass there, he's falling asleep. Unlike the problem that we have with our first caller, she is a dog and she's obviously got problems. Lorraine King from Birmingham. Hi, Lorraine.
You're not a dog, Lorraine, it's all right.
What's your problem? What would you like to ask Peter?
Well, I've got a cross-border collie and he's a very loving, affectionate dog until you come to leave the house. He jumps up at the door, growls, barks and goes for whoever's leaving.
Right. Okay, now this is quite a common symptom of a dog that perceives itself as being of quite high rank in your family pack. And the problem is that when you go to leave, that's seen as a challenge to his authority. In other words, he thinks that he should be the one who leads you off into new activity or off onto a hunting trip. And so he makes every effort to try and head you off and keep you tight as a group. There is just a possibility that he's also an anxious dog, and I'd have to see him to tell you which way round it is. And he's actually very worried about the prospect of being left and feels very vulnerable and thinks the only way that he can keep secure is to keep you all together. Now, the thing to do is, first of all, have an overall approach whereby you actually demote him a little bit in the family, which means we have a nothing in life is free policy. He has to earn being fed, being fussed, all good things in life. He has to towards you and sit before he gets them. he can have just as much fun love as you want, but you must initiate it. The next thing to do is to set up the situation whereby he's on a nice medium-length trailing lead. He's kept back from heading you off. In other words, his attempt to head you off fails, but he's rewarded every time someone leaves the room. So in other words, don't get into conflict with him. Any sort of conflict with an aggressive dog promotes aggression, and you're more likely to be bitten.
So are you saying that Lorraine shouldn't punish the dog for what he does?
Absolutely, and that's a golden rule with any form of aggression in dogs. If you punish them, all you do is increase their arousal, and more excited dog is more likely to bite you. You have to think round the problem, prevent it happening if you can, as in this case with a lead and someone holding the dog back, and reward him for the behaviour that you want.
Right, so positive reinforcement.
Positive reinforcement all the way.
Okay, positive reinforcement, Lorraine, how does that sound, all right?
Well, I'll give it a try. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much for calling. Let's go to our next caller. We've got a caller from Robert Bruce in Aberdeen. Robert, what's your problem?
Good morning.
Hi, Robert.
It's concerning a black five-month-old male cat that I have. In your own words, has been described as being psychotic. It attacks strangers, visitors to our flat. It attacks them, and it has it on occasions turned on us as well.
And what do you do to stop it, Robert?
Occasionally, I've grown up with cats most of my life, and we've found that giving it a slap on the nose usually helps, but it's case actually aggravates the cat even more.
Right, which is what Peter was saying. So what can Robert do?
Is he attacking any particular type of visitor? Is it children or ladies, or can it be anybody?
Anybody that comes in.
Okay. And how does the attack begin? Is it a straight jump and assault on the leg, or is he going for the face? Or
usually it's an assault on the leg, and he tries to clamber up, and then he goes for the hands.
Right. And people presumably get a bit frightened about that.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody apart from the family that he likes and tolerates?
No.
No one.
No, not at all.
Okay. Right, I think the way around this is to desensitise him to the arrival of visitors. It can mean a major upheaval for dogs and cats to have visitors into the home. And the problem is that his attacks are actually succeeding because they stop the visitor in the tracks, if only to get the cat off.
Yeah.
And what we need is for that to fail. So what I would do is have a chat with your vet or a local cat breeder and try to get a large kittening pen and house him in there. Get a string of people, as many as you can, to come in, one after the other. And it doesn't matter really how long they stay. It's their arrival that's the important thing. So as many as possible. The cat's assault on the visitor will fail because he's caged in the pen. I'm not saying he should stay in there all the time, by the way. This is just for these introductions. When he seems to have calmed down, then the visitor can go and perhaps sit next to him. And the idea is that you're watering down the invasion. Hopefully, we can then get to the position where they can start to be nice to him, talk to him, perhaps offer a few tidbits through the bars. And what you should see is the time that it takes for him to accept visitors falling.
So this is quite a long process, yeah?
It could be quite a long process, and it may be that a chat with your vet about one or two little drugs to help things along the way might be worthwhile. But do it now, because he's 5 months old, and he is in a good position to relearn that he's learnt badly.
Poor Robert, I don't envy you up there in Aberdeen. Best of luck with your cat anyway, and thanks for calling in.
Thank you very much.
All right. Are cats more difficult than dogs to train to be non-aggressive?
Yeah. I think you've picked the right word, because one tends to think in terms of dogs can be trained. They'll sit, stay, jump through fiery hoops, herd sheep and so on. But that's a very different thing from what I'm talking about, which is inherent behaviour patterns.
Right.
Dogs which are naturally territorially aggressive. We like dogs to bark when the door is knocked, but we also want them to accept the people that we let into our home.
Well,
so it's a compromise, and unfortunately with cats, people accept that they're not really trainable, and therefore perhaps they tend to think there isn't so much that can be done. But if you get the learning conditions right, then yes, they can respond very well.
Let's see what problem Anne MacDonald has in Belfast. Good morning, Anne.
Good morning.
Is it a canine pet you have?
It is, yes.
And what's your problem?
I have two terrier bitches, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. Now, I recently bought another bitch, a year-old. Now, she's fine with the younger of the other two, but very aggressive with the older one. And it only happens when there's a human in the room with them.
Right. You've got the classic dog pack scene, and unfortunately it's usually when it happens less often between bitches, but when it happens it's that much more serious. So when the girls get fighting, it really is a problem. But interestingly here, you've got the answer in your hands, because the only time dogs don't have a problem is when there are no people around. In other words, it's the people who are influencing their hierarchy, influencing their pack status. They've sorted it out. They know who's 1, 2 and 3. They've accommodated a new dog until you're there. And what I suspect is happening, that as with any new puppy and any new dog, you tend to spoil the new arrival. You tend to be too nice to them, and that upsets the other dogs and gives it rights that it hasn't really earned. So switch off, ignore your new dog, except when it's on its own and in sequence after the other two, and you should keep the order that they've established.
So it sounds what you're saying to Anne is that she needs to understand why the bitches are reacting like that in the first place.
Yes, you need to have a good understanding of how dog pack hierarchies work, so read up about it, but make sure you favour your older bitches, your established bitches, and be very much more offhand with the new one.
Well, I do. I mean, I do that, but this other younger one, she stares at the older one and then she walks over.
Right, it may even be worthwhile you just restraining her or penning her when you're all together as a family for a while, so that the rights are established with the other one. Once the fight starts, you might be able to save the battle, but you'll never think ahead in the war.
All right, best of luck with your two bitches there, Anne, and thanks for ringing in. All right. Thank you, Peter, for coming in with Kath, a very docile dog indeed. She's beautiful.
Fast asleep as usual.